They buried him on a Thursday. By the following Thursday, 3 of his cows had stopped giving milk. His younger son could no longer rise from bed. And every night, at exactly 3 in the morning, his wife heard boots, heavy, deliberate boots, walking across the tile roof. Her husband was in the ground. She had watched them lower the coffin. She had thrown the first handful of earth. But the dead do not always stay where you put them. Not in Romania. Not when the dead have unfinished business with the living. This is the story of the Strigoi, the original vampire. Not the creature of Hollywood. Not the Gothic count in his castle. Something far older. Far worse. And far more personal. The word Strigoi comes from the Latin strix, the night bird. A creature the ancient Romans believed fed on human flesh. A bird of ill omen that screamed at the hour of death. When Rome conquered Dacia, the land we now call Romania, they brought their fears. The word took root. The bird became a person. The scream became a curse. Unlike Western vampires, aristocratic, seductive, the Strigoi is your neighbor. Your uncle. It does not sleep in a coffin lined with velvet. It sleeps in the grave you dug for it until the 7th night, when it claws its way out. And this is not ancient history. In 2004, in the Romanian village of Maritinu de Sus, a family dug up their dead relative 20 days after burial. They burned his heart. They mixed the ashes with water. And they drank it. The police were called. They could not charge anyone. The family had done what Romanian families have done for centuries. Not all Strigoi are the same. Romanian folklore makes a critical distinction. First, the Strigoi viu. The living Strigoi. A person still breathing, but born under a curse. Perhaps born with a membrane covering their face. Perhaps the 7th child of the same sex. At night, their spirit leaves their body and drains the life force from others. Then, the Strigoi mort. The corpse that rises. The most feared entity in Romanian folklore, the dead body reanimating on the 7th night, returning to its family. Not to visit. To feed. And there is a third form, the moroi. The Strigoi child. Born from an unbaptized infant. The moroi specifically targets young mothers and newborns. Who becomes a Strigoi? Those who died without last rites. The excommunicated. The murderer. The person killed by a Strigoi because the curse passes through the wound. The pregnant woman who dies before giving birth. The Strigoi is a moral taxonomy. Some people are so dangerous in death that they must be prevented from rising or destroyed if they do. How do you know a Strigoi is active? Romanian folklore gives you 7 signs. 1. Your livestock begins to waste. Cows give less milk. Horses lose weight overnight. The Strigoi feeds on vitality and animals are easier targets. 2. A wasting sickness in the home. Family members develop fatigue, pallor, weakness, especially those the deceased resented in life. 3. Sounds in the night. Digging from the cemetery. Footsteps on the roof. Scratching at windows. Slow. Deliberate. 4. Doors open by themselves. The Strigoi transforms into a cat, a dog, a moth, a fly. You may have seen it and not known. 5. Dreams. The deceased appears. Often angry. Dream invasion is a primary attack vector. 6. Crops fail. Grain spoils. Wine turns to vinegar. The Strigoi's presence corrupts the material world. And 7. The cascade. One death, then another, then another. Each new victim at risk of becoming a Strigoi themselves. The chain continues until the grave is opened. The best Strigoi is one that never rises. Romanian preventive measures were systematic. Place a sickle over the corpse during the vigil. Drive hawthorn thorns into the soles of the feet, through the hands, and into the heart. Bury the body face down, so that if it tries to claw out, it goes deeper into the earth. Spread poppy seeds in the grave. The Strigoi must count every single seed before it can leave, and counting takes all night, so it must return before dawn. But when prevention fails, they call it trampling the grave. The family gathers on the 7th night. A priest must be present. They dig. They open the coffin. And they look at the body. If the corpse is not decomposed, if there is fresh blood around the mouth, if new hair and nails have grown, if the skin is flushed and ruddy, then you have your Strigoi. The priest drives a hawthorn stake through the heart. The body arches. And that sound, that scream, is where the creature gets its name. The Strigoi. The shriek. Then, decapitation. The body is burned. The ashes are mixed with water. And the family drinks to reclaim the power of the dead. To reabsorb the curse. It is horror and love. At the same moment. Vasile Carnu was not a good man. In Maramure's, they will tell you this first. As if his character explains everything that followed. And perhaps it does. He was a farmer with 40 hectares of good land. A stone house with a tile roof. A wife named Doina, who had stopped smiling 3 years into their marriage. 2 sons, Ion, the elder, who had his father's cold eyes. And Mihai, the younger, who suffered for having his mother's softness. Vasile beat his wife. Not often, he was precise. When the accounts did not balance. When his soup was cold. When he simply woke in a mood to break something. He cheated his neighbors. He moved boundary stones at night. When old Manole died without heirs, Vasile claimed the land. No one dared challenge him. He died on a November evening. Alone. The doctor said it was his heart. Doina sat very still for a long time. Then she went home. And she cleaned the house from top to bottom. And she did not weep. The funeral was on Thursday. They buried him in the churchyard. He had always been particular about controlling things. Even his own grave. That night, Doina slept deeply, dreamlessly, for the first time in longer than she could remember. At 3 in the morning, she woke to the sound of boots on the tile roof. Not wind. Not an animal. Boots. Heavy. Deliberate. Then, 3 knocks on the front door. Slow. The knock of someone who knows you are inside. Doina did not open the door. She did not breathe until dawn. By the following Thursday, 3 cows had stopped giving milk. Mihai began to lose weight. Within 2 weeks, his clothes hung loose. I dream of father, he told his mother. Every night. He stands at the foot of my bed and he is angry. He says I did not mourn him properly. That night, Doina hung a braid of garlic over Mihai's door. But the dreams continued. Old Betrana Elena came to Doina on the 19th day. Your husband is walking, she said. He is buried, said Doina. He is buried. And he is walking. Your son is dying. The garlic will not be enough. You know what must be done. They went on the 21st night. Father Gheorghe, Betrana Elena, Ion, and Doina. They brought shovels, a hawthorn stake, and a bottle of tuica for courage. The earth was too soft for 3 weeks of November frost. At 4 feet, the shovel hit wood. They cleared the coffin lid. It was scratched. From the inside. Father Gheorghe opened the coffin. Vasile lay inside. Eyes open. His skin flushed, the ruddy pink of a man who had just come in from the cold. His fingernails had grown. Dried blood in the corners of his mouth. He looked, Father Gheorghe would later say, fed. Do it, said Doina. Her voice flat. The voice of a woman who had already buried this man once in her heart. Father Gheorghe drove the hawthorn stake into the corpse's chest. The body arched. And that sound, that scream, air escaping a sealed room. The sound that gives the Strigoi its name. Then stillness. The flush drained from the skin. In seconds, the body aged decades. What had been a man became a corpse, a proper corpse, a thing that would never walk again. They burned the heart. They burned the body. They mixed the ashes with water from the Isa river. And Ion and Mihai drank, because that is what must be done. Doina did not drink. She stood apart, watching the fire. Mihai recovered within a week. The cows gave milk again. The house was quiet. But Doina never slept well again. And on certain November nights, when the wind pressed against the windows, she would lie awake and listen. Not for boots on the roof, but for the sound of her own heart. Still beating. Still carrying the blood of a man she had helped destroy. She had done what was necessary. She had protected her children. But the folklore does not tell you what happens to the woman who opens her husband's grave. It does not tell you what she dreams. Whether the ashes truly protect, or whether some part of the Strigoi lives on. Not in the blood, but in the silence between a mother and her sons. In the thing that was done together, and never spoken of again. The folklore does not tell you this. Because folklore is not interested in the living. It is interested in the dead who will not stay buried. Let me tell you what the Strigoi really is. Because it is not a monster story. Strip away the supernatural, the open graves, the stake, the ashes, and what you find is a village-level justice system. In a world without police. Without courts. Vasile the farmer could beat his wife. Steal his neighbor's land. With impunity. Because he was feared. But the Strigoi tradition says, we will open your grave. We will stake your heart. Your power ends at the cemetery gate. This is not horror. This is hope. Expressed in the language of horror. The Strigoi is grief made flesh. The wasting sickness it causes, the fatigue, the pallor maps precisely onto recognized grief responses. And the deepest terror? The Strigoi does not attack strangers. It attacks its own family. The people it hated in life. The dead father who still controls the household. Still drains the life from his sons. The stake through the heart is not just a folk remedy. It is the first act of liberation. The Strigoi tradition has survived for 1,000 years because it encodes real knowledge. 1. The dead reflect the living. Abuse does not end at the grave. 2. Grief can kill. If you are grieving and you feel yourself fading, seek help. The Strigoi is not real. But the sickness it describes is. 3. Confront what frightens you. Avoidance feeds the Strigoi. Confrontation kills it. 4. Protection is communal. No one opens the grave alone. 5. To be free of the dead, you must fully accept what they were. Not romanticize. Not deny. Consume the truth of them. And 6. Some people do not deserve the peace of the grave. Your actions have consequences that outlast your heartbeat. If you recognize the Strigoi pattern in your own life, a dead relationship that still drains you, a parent's cruelty that outlived their body, the folklore has a prescription. Name it. Open it. Confront what you find. Burn what needs to burn. And if you cannot do it alone, gather your village. The Strigoi persists. Not because Romanian villagers are superstitious. But because the fear it addresses, that the dead are not at peace, that the cruel are not punished, that grief has no end, is a fear that never goes away. Every vampire movie you have ever watched. Every gothic novel. Every creature of the night that drinks blood in the darkness. All of them are shadows. Cast by the Strigoi. Standing at the foot of your grave. Watching. Waiting. Listening for your heartbeat to stop. Because the dead do not always stay where you put them. Not in Romania.